back to MICROCASA Internet Conference. So this is the second day and the first sessions of the second day. Welcome. And so I will go straight to the point that we will invite Professor Dr. Delgado Kloos to share with us a very important keynote that speaks directly to the central questions of this gathering today. How higher education can respond meaningfully to the demand of a rapid changing 21st centuries. So Professor Delgado Kloos has been at the forefront of digital education. It is therefore most fitting that he opens today's program with a keynote on the role of micro-credential in the 21st century. Professor Dr. Kloos received the PhD degree in computer science from the Technological University of Munich and in telecommunications engineering from the Technical University of Madrid. He is full professor of telematic engineering at the University Carlos III of Madrid, where he is the director of the Telematic Application and Services Group, GAST, director of the UNESCO Chair on Scalable Digital Education for All, and rector delegates for digital micro-credentials. He has carried out research stay at several universities such as Harvard, MIT, Munich, and Passau in Germany. His main research interests are in education technology. He has been involved in a large number of research projects and has published more than 500 articles. He has coordinated several MOOCs with over 600,000 registration and is presently promoting the adoptions of digital micro-credential in Spain through the project Certi Digital. So please join me in welcoming Professor Dr. Kloos, who will deliver his keynote titled Micro-Credentials, an Essential Format for 21st Century Education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here now for the third time, in the second time in this auditorium, and to meet so many friends and in a very nice setting. So I'm going to share some reflections, some thoughts. Some of them you have heard me already, but I think I will give them a different twist right now about micro-credentials, which is definitely the essential format for 21st century education. But we have seen in the previous talks a beautiful landscape, a beautiful panorama, a beautiful situation of micro-credentials. And although this is a sentence sometimes Armin says, I will be the troublemaker in this case, and we'll look under this nice surface, under this nice calm panorama, and look into the hidden depths to see that not everything is so nice, not everything is wonderful, and that there are a lot of issues there to be taken into account. I don't need to say what is already obvious, the skills gap, the need for upskilling, reskilling, etc. I will not repeat that. I will not repeat the importance, the need for micro-credential, which has been recognized by UNESCO, ECDE, European Commission, and even the government, of course, the Malaysian government, very prominently, etc. So this is all clear. And I will briefly go over the definition of micro-credential. This is the definition by European Commission in the Council decision of 2022, a recommendation. It's the record of the learning outcomes that the learner has acquired following a small volume of learning. And these learning outcomes have been assessed, the importance of assessment, again, transparent and clearly defined standards. So this we have seen in this way or some similar ways, where this digital format to specify the record is often called micro-credential, but also the course, the small volume of learning, this packaging content in a different way, in a small volume way, is also called micro-credential. So it's okay to have this for the same name refer to the digital credential as well as for the short course. I will now go into three aspects of microcredentials. One is the volume, it has to be small. One about the teaching mode, and one about the certification, digital credential. And I will see the options there for these three aspects, these three characteristics, in order to later on reflect on the implications this has on universities. We as universities, it's not business as usual, it's something different, which is changing because of this aspect, volume, teaching mode, and certification. So let me go to this first aspect and then have this reflection on the implications and how universities must change, must transform in order to keep up for this challenge. Volume, okay, has to be small, this we know. I've asked Gemini, how small is it? It says from 4 to 160 hours to complete. Well, there are many definitions around. We know that being small, you can fit in more. We are all, I see some people looking at the mobile phones or doing something else at the same time as doing this. So many things fit in if they are small, if it's just a correction. And we have seen in many different aspects the fragmentation, no? From postal letter to just a like. So doing for communication, for instance, smaller and smaller things. And we can see this in many aspects. You know, we can see this, the fragmentation of MOOCs. The first MOOCs were 1 semester long, and then they became shorter because more people would follow them. The videos, instead of 45 minutes or 6 minutes lectures, they became shorter and shorter in order to, this is an analysis done by Eric some time ago, that more time, video time is seen if the videos are shorter, and in many other places. No, we now follow series rather than 3-hour-long movies, maybe series where each episode is 20, 30, 40 minutes, rather than long movies. We, rather than by long plays, we combine songs into playlists, rather than reading newspapers, long articles. We are up to date because of social media, very short pills of information. And the same happens with microcredentials, with learning, with education, rather than 4, 5, or 3 year-long programs. We can consume in a much faster way, much more convenient way, and convenience is very important, short microcredentials. But how small is small? There was on purpose no definition in the recommendation by the European Commission and in other recommendations, and there's no actually agreed size. You know already, Spain has regulated by law that it's less than 15 ECTS. It's not 15, it's less than 15, so it could be 14.999 maybe, but not 15. In the Netherlands, for instance, there's a recommendation between 3 and 30. In Germany and in Switzerland, I think it's up to 9 ECTS, because the national regulations had other kinds of things. No? In Spain, we had 15 CTS and over the expert and then the specialist. No? So this is less than an expert. And also in Germany, I think there was 10 ECTS, some kind, I don't remember the name, for some of the courses. So what is smaller, it becomes a microcredential. So this is not a uniform definition of the length of the microcredential. This poses opportunities, but also challenges about, for instance, stackability. Can you stack several microcredentials to make something bigger? How can you reuse them? How can you recognize prior learning? Can you, the prior learning, use it to get different degrees or different programs, certificates, just with the same content? Yes, it's possible, but it raises a lot of questions which are not yet solved. But so this is a very interesting proposal by MIT, which has not been implemented, but it's just a book of this new education institution where you can see that they propose to have a 4-year program on the basis of microcredentials. So each of these blocks is a microcredential. So if you don't finish the whole program, you get something at the end. You get maybe foundations or math systems, science foundation, etc. So but the adding up these different micro-credentials, you finally get to a full program. But there's still a lot of problems there. Let me mention some use cases because it's good to see what the world is doing. We have some mentions. It's very rich, around the world. But from Spain, from Mexico, we were last week, from Germany also, and from Google, and from UC3M also. For instance, WOC, the Open University of Catalonia, it's interesting to see that they offer micro-credentials, but from 1 CTS to 36 CTS. So this is not by Spanish law a micro-credential, but it doesn't matter. So you put it into the big catalog of courses. When one is bigger, it's not officially called micro-credential, but doesn't matter. UNED, the distance university in Spain, they offer micro-bachelors, micro-masters, different namings, giving paper diplomas, not digital diplomas, Well, it's more or less micro-credentials, it really doesn't matter. Tec de Monterrey is very interesting because they have made an effort to really getting through the idea of micro-credentials, where they offer both curricular and alternative credentials. What does it mean? Curricular credentials are those which are within a bachelor's program, so that it can be within the discipline, can be transversal skills, or can be training experiences. And for these different trainings, they can get curricular credentials. But then there are also the alternative credentials, which are really more for lifelong learning, for upskilling and reskilling, which are not related to particular programs. So both views, to have it as an add-on to bachelor programs or master programs, or included into these programs, is possible. As also can be seen by Eurotech. This is this alliance where the Technical University of Munich is there, where they very clearly distinguish micro-credentials for professionals, for upskilling, reskilling, and micro-credentials for students during the course of their studies. Let me also mention, which is to come out today, the micro-credentials Carlos and me were offering at UC3M about generative AI. It's a 2 CTS course, costs 300 euros. We asked before pricing. There are scholarships by Banco Santander for those who deserve it, whatever. So if you want to have a look, we have this in June. We are teaching this micro-credential, and there's a large catalog, a large list of micro-credentials which are offered at our university. Also, it's very important to mention what providers like Google are doing, because they have a large series of courses of different sizes, of different topics on AI, on cloud computing, on this newly arranged website, skills.google or skills.google.com, where they offer online courses, with a very confusing terminology. They talk about skill badges, certifications, and certificates. Not the same certification as certificate. They distinguish it somehow, but you see that there's a very confusing terminology around these short courses. By the way, they offer the credentials by Credly, by another commercial provider. So there's a very rich field of courses. This is again the Google Skills. You see you can search by under 30 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes, on over 60 minutes. So this is how they classify these different training experiences. So let me summarize this first part by saying micro-credentials are short, but of undefined size. There's no uniform terminology, but it opens up new questions. Some of them I mentioned briefly, stackability and resolution of prior learning, but others which I will follow up later, about governance, about evolution, about quality assurance. Let me finish this first part with my Gemini-generated image about the micro-credential maze, where the different definitions. First part. Second part. I have to go a bit faster. Teaching mode. Do the micro-credentials have to be online? Some people think about this. Last week, when we were in Mexico, I was talking to a high person of Banco Santander. I said, okay, thank you very much for offering the support for our micro-credentials. And he said, I hope it will go into our online distribution. No, it's a face-to-face course. So our course could be online. It's not. It's face-to-face there with the real people, no? In the same room. Some people think microclasses have to be online. All the Google courses are online, but they don't have to be. No? So it can be in person or distance. No? I don't know what is better. I have this old slide of mine, but some people say it's better in person. Some people say distance is not so close, not the warmth of the person. But sometimes, if you look very closely, the person at the end is quite distant, even if they're in the same room, and maybe you have a closer connection to people online. No, so maybe it's the wrong way. No, maybe this is distance education, and maybe this is in-person education because you have a much closer. Because it's not important if you're in the same room or not. It's not physical distance that matters. It's interaction. It's the possibility to interact and to talk to one another, which is more important really than the physical settings. No? And some people say, but can you do collaborative learning also online? Yes, you can. You can. I have these slides where I have this notation. This is together physical room, together an online space, but in the online space you can also have groups of people in the same table. In this, for instance, in a tool called Engagely, where the students can be in a table, online table with some other students, and at the same time in the lecture hall with all the students. It's not changing rooms. It's being both at the same time with your neighbor and being attending to the professor. No? And therefore you can imagine different collaborative settings. You can have the in-person, you can have the online setting, but you can have also these online tables. It's online and people are maybe sitting together virtually and talking to one another without disturbing the other ones. And then you can establish a number of different collaborative ways. So each of these groups works on shared talks, separate, or you can have collaborative patterns like Jigsaw and others, or you can have also polls and quizzes and arrange them differently. So it's also possible online to have collaboration, and you can also have hybrid combinations, and you can have even playback with the person which is helping out in this playback. So many combinations, they are not necessarily one better than the other, all are good and all are possible. So let me finish this fast thing about the teaching mode. Many different teaching modes are possible, not just online, not just face-to-face, many combinations are possible, and even collaboration is possible online. Let me come to the third point. Let me finish with the AI-generated image, online, on-site, hybrid. Third point, certification, the digital or paper credentialing. How to certify my credentials? Here, a certificate presented to Muhammad Ali for passing a course on credentials given by UNED. Done yesterday. Yeah. Okay, good. Muhammad Ali, I think there are thousands of them. No? It's, I think, the most frequent name here. Maybe it does not identify the person exactly. For UNED, there's a UNED in Spain, Universidad de Educación a Distancia, but there's UNED in Costa Rica, Universidad Nacional de Estudios a Distancia. Which UNED is it? Is it just by the name you can identify which is the issuing institution? For passing, but what are the achievements, the outcomes by the student? And the course on credentials, but this is not enough. We need a bit more details. So these are four aspects: the person, the institution, the outcomes, and the details of the course, which are important to be able to cover in the credential. As the European approach of micro-credential says, that you have to identify the learner, the credential holder, as well as the issuer very precisely. It's not just giving the name. And this is done basically by using in different formats around the world by using the W3C verifiable credentials data model, which allows to certify things in general, not in particular in the educational context. It can be driver's license, etc., because you can identify a user, an institution, granting, and some claims about. So this student is an alumni of this university. This is this verifiable credentials, which is quite uniformly accepted. And on top of this, there are basically two important initiatives that put on top of this the educational aspects. What has been learned, what are the outcomes, what are the assessments, what are the learning activities. There are basically two open badges by One Tech, which is based on WCC, and ELM, European Learning Model, by the European Commission that takes the same basis. And you see here the 5 things: learning activities, assessments, achievements, outcomes, and entitlements, which is European Learning Model into 30 different languages. So I will go a bit faster. So the European Learning Model is 480 fields. It is very rich. You can specify many things, maybe too many things, but it has 4 application profiles, which I will go through very briefly. The learning opportunities, or the specification of the course, who is issuing it, to whom, to the learner, and about learning information. This is the European Digital Credentials, which is inside the European Learning Model. So these 4 aspects we have seen before are relevant and can be specified with different levels of robustness. The first one is this learning opportunities and qualifications. What can be studied, what it leads to, it belongs to the specification. And can you go to course catalogs, to national qualification registers, to MICROCASA ecosystems, etc., and for mobility and recognition tools. So this is the specification, if you wish, of the course. Secondly, who authorized it, who is issuing this credential, and under which authority I am issuing as an institution a credential. No? So, for instance, a quality assurance body or ministry of a particular country can give an education provider the license or the accreditation to be able to issue officially recognized credentials. For instance, Spain is the Fábrica Nacional de Moneda y Timbre, who gives us as the university a seal, a digital seal, that you can put into the credential in order to assure that we are accredited to do so, and we are the only ones to be able to issue this credential. So this is important because it's not just the name of the university, it's an official digital seal that gives us the possibility to do so. Personal identity, I will go very fast to this, can be done at different levels of robustness as well. Can be just a name, can be an email, can be a national identity, like the Dutch have done, for instance, with EduID. They have defined a national identity for students that is only valid to the Netherlands, or you can have more broader identifications, like those based on EIDAS, Electronic Identification, Authentication, and Trust, with My Academic ID or the European Student Identifier. That is valid in Europe. It's not valid around the world, but it identifies a student throughout Europe. So it's interesting to note that, for instance, for Open Badges version 1.0 and 2.0, it's just the email who identifies the student, which is very weak. It's only the 3rd version, and in ELM, that other more robust identifications of the student came. So the achievement of learning are these 5 things, which are learning activities, assessment, achievement, outcomes, and entitlements, that can be also specified in the credential. And in one credential, you can see then with in the European course builder, digital online course builder, you can see whether a credential has the seal from a university. Is it accredited and therefore maybe registered in DECAR, in the database of the European Quality Assurance Register. So there are 3rd parties who are there explicitly and in a safe way, secure way, saying that this certification is valid. So to finalize the third part, in order to have some time for the final conclusions, no? The certification can be just very weak, some names, no details, or can be very robust with identifying precisely the person, the institution issuing, the contents, the achievements, the outcomes and entitlements of the course. Let me finish also with this AI-generated image. So either very weak, learner identification, user identification, and the course details, or very strong, very robust, identifying a lot of the learner, the issuer, and giving a lot of details for the course. So now this is the important thing. We have seen these three axes, these three dimensions. No, teaching mode can be online, hybrid, and on-site. The volume can be very small or much larger. We don't know until when. And the certification can be just text, so you can add achievements. You can robustly identify the person, the student, the learner, and there can be institutional seal and accreditation. It can be, this image is not so nice, but I mean, you can have different aspects which make the credential more robust. And the important thing to note is that it can be very hard to have an on-site long course with a lot of robustness there. On-site, you need infrastructure, you need rooms, you need digital infrastructure, etc. Or it can be very easy. Just a 30 minutes course, which you deliver online, and you give just a few bits saying that somebody has followed. And in this width, you can move here and there. And everything is called micro-credentials, but you have to realize, are you there or are you there? So in order to round up then this argument, let me talk about formality, about formal education, about non-formal education, and about informal education. I don't like this naming, it's standard, no? The opposite of formal is not non-formal, it's not informal, it's both. Okay, good. But it's very well established now. No? What is formal education? Is what we do at universities, which are accredited institutions, highly regulated, quality assured. To change something, of course, it takes 2 years until you get approved by the agency, etc. So bachelor, master's program, etc. So here you can see me in a formal dress, with this formal education. Accredited institutions in Spain, they are in this register of universities, of centers and titles. Everything is very regulated. It is basically on what Bologna has defined, which is basically 2 main cycles, undergraduate and graduate, so it's bachelor's, and graduate is master's and doctorate courses. No? And the agencies who check everything, etc. Good. So this is a good image of what it means formal. Even the grass is regulated. It's 1 inch, it's very precise. No? So everything has to be very much checked, etc., which is basically a monopoly if you take the whole universities together, or if you take one by one, it's an oligopoly. So it's difficult to get in. To establish a new university takes time. There's a lot of resources, etc. So they cover this market in an oligopolistic way. Let's move to the non-formal education. It's organized but flexible. It's organized outside of the formal system. Short courses with quizzes and certificates of skills, etc. It's lightly regulated. And under this category, I would put MOOCs, micro-credentials, and many other things. No boot camps, first aid courses, language evening class, etc. No? Here you see me in more casual, non-formal. Examples, MOOCs, micro-credentials. It has been now entered, but the Bologna process didn't talk about micro-credentials, but now with this and other recommendations of the world, micro-credentials is something universities can do, also in Spain with the royal degrees, etc. So this is entering as a new way of teaching for universities. Let me show you this image, which is from the Spanish qualification framework. We have here on the left is basically the EQF. 8 is framework. 8 is PhD, 7 is master, 6 is bachelor. And now, where can you offer micro-credentials? You can offer in Spain, in other places as well, micro-credentials where you need to have a previous degree, no? So for level 7 and 8. So it's required for the learners to have passed a bachelor's program, but you can also, as university, offer micro-credentials for any other citizen where no such requirement is given. This is on the one hand, but then also the vocational education training institutions enter, and they can offer all, maybe not for at the PhD level or master level, but also in the previous levels. So it's now more, it's all called micro-credentials. So we have not just universities alone, but also the vocational education training providers can also enter this market. But not only them, there can be unregulated providers, commercial, industry, maybe with quality assurance, internal and external, etc., that are also entering this field. And even more, you can have other commercial providers, but it's no quality assurance, but they are also playing a role in this market of micro-credentials. So the situation with respect to the oligopolistic situation before is different. This is now a marketplace, where in the same marketplace, you have here, there's a university here, there's another public university here, but they are not so much doing so much marketing here that Alex, Coursera, or Google, or Siemens, etc. No, they are maybe much more. Maybe they manage much better the way to recruit student learners, and they are much more visible, no, than the universities, which are not used to compete with other providers as it's necessary right now. So this is a bazaar, a micro-credential program. So, and now for the third version, which is not so relevant here, but for completeness, there's the informal education, which is natural, spontaneous, unplanned, unstructured. You learn from everywhere. You can learn Italian from walking through Naples, for instance, or you can fix a bike by seeing how it's done on YouTube, or learn to cook from family, or learning from social networks, which I think many of us do a lot. No? It's ad hoc, no assessment, no certification, no quality assurance. This is myself. I'm a bit thinner than in reality, which is good, in a more informal. This is a YouTube channel, influencer we follow, etc. So now this is a situation. This is chaos, everything. Of course, there's a lot of things which is no quality, scams. No, those who say no scam, they're probably a scam. No, or you can learn how to have 1 million followers in 1 month, or not. And maybe there's some universities also there, but not so much paid attention. So this is chaos. So we have these 3 different settings, and you can have quality evaluation assessment at several levels. You can check whether the learning has really happened. Did the student really learn? You can check whether the teaching was good, it's quality assurance of the course, and you can have a more or less robust certification. So these are 3 aspects, which in reality is just putting a wrapper, some committees, some procedures, some tests, in order to know whether whatever is the relevant item is done well. For instance, you can have student assessment, you make exams, you have committees, you have etc. No? You can also check the quality of the course, internal quality assurance, external quality assurance. You put some committees, some procedures, etc. around to see whether the teaching was good. And you can have, as we have seen also, a robust or less robust credential. If you want to make robust, you involve more stakeholders and more procedures, etc. So these 3 aspects are there in the formal education. You have exams, program release, assessment, necessary, of course, quality assurance, of course, and certification has to be also very robust. And on the other extreme, you have, where is it here? Next. So you have the social networks. It takes some time. Okay. Where you have no assessment, it's not needed. You want to learn something. You don't learn how to fix a bike. I don't need anything. We have to find it. I'm finishing. No quality assurance. Quality assurance is the number of followers you have. No? If it's a very good influencer, they will have many followers. Why do we need quality assurance? And maybe don't get the certification at all. And in between, you have this phase where I have the micro-credentials, which have a little bit of the formal education, a little bit of the non-formal education. You can have different rulers there. You can move to the right or to the left. No? Now, this one is hard. You need infrastructure, you need assurance procedures, and this one is easy. No? And now these formal institutions have to be playing with other stakeholders in this other different field. No? And some people recognize this is Andreas Schleicher, the Mr. PISA, no? The OECD education. Universities must change or otherwise lose their place to alternative education providers who are much more flexible, much more active in marketing, in maybe dynamic pricing. We have fixed prices. Maybe we can have dynamic prices depending, like in the plane. No, the next one sitting next to you has paid the double or the half of the price for the exact same seat. So there are many different techniques there. And if you, as a formal university, go to the marketplace, I mean, you cannot compete because you're not accustomed to negotiate, to market yourself. So you have to adapt more to the situation. So maybe if you put this on, maybe it's a bit better. And this has to make us reflect, think that universities has to change in order to play a role, a relevant role in this marketplace. And let me give some pointers, and then I'm finishing. No, we have to have an observatory for the identification of needs for the learners. We have to deepen. We have a lot of relationship with companies, but maybe we have to interact with them differently. We have to define a new way of the education model. The University of Graz, for instance, has a very nice education model. You have to be able to set up new micro-credentials and kill them very fast as the market needs. You have to be able to reuse and evolve the content. You have to revisit the governance of it. My university, somebody told me, we are devoting the same amount of time for this master program as for this micro-credential. And this micro-credential is only to the CTS in compared to that. So you have to change the inner structures of the university in order to be able to not to die in the effort of providing micro-credentials. You have to recognize university service and streamline management process and management tools and rethink marketing. So the number, probably this is just random list of things, but it reflects the fact that we are entering as universities, formal education institutions, a field which has different rules, and we have to adapt to it. Because when we do so, maybe we have the formal quality inside, but outside we are better prepared to play a role in this new market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very comprehensive sharings, Professor Dr. Kloos, from design of micro-credentials, credentialing, and also governance. And of course, I think the last part is very, very important, how we can continue to be agile, responsive to the environment and the needs while offering micro-credential in the 21st century. Thank you very much, Dr. Kloos.
Thank you very much.
Now I would like to invite my colleagues, Dr. Siti Haslina, to introduce our next keynote speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Chua. Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the fourth keynote speech by Professor Dr. Aniello Merone. May I introduce to you to Professor Dr. Aniello Merone. Professor Dr. Aniello Merone is an Associate Professor of Civil Procedural Law and Coordinator of the Master's Degree in Law at the European University of Rome, where he also served as Rector's Delegate and Coordinator for International Relations. He has several experiences as visiting professor in the US, Mexico, and Spain. In 2009, he obtained a PhD in International Arbitration Law at Luis, University of Rome, with a dissertation on international sport arbitration, and is currently a member of the teaching body of the PhD in General Procedural Theory at the LUM of Casamasima. Aniello's research works have been published in national and internationally scientific journals. He is also a regular speaker at national and international academic conferences, director of the editorial board of the Sport Law Review, published by the Italian Olympic Committee, and member of the editorial boards of other scientific journals. He has developed several projects of cooperation in higher education area with universities in Europe, North and South America, and Asia. From 2019, he has focused his attention on microcredential, serving as director of 2 projects carried out with CHIMIA, the first, which was in 2020, on credential evaluation, and the second, which was in 2021, on the European Qualifications Passport for Refugees. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Professor Dr. Aniello Merone to deliver his keynote speech with the title of EU Regulations on Microcredentials, Legal Aspects of Reliability, Governance, and Protection of Rights. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Before to start, allow me to express my sincere thanks to University Science Malaysia for the wonderful hospitality that you offer us, to all the colleagues working on the MICROCASA project for the last 3 years, since it's been a really enriching experience. How to demonstrate how it was enriching when I made my first talk 3 years ago. I used, if I remember correctly, 6 slides to talk 1.5 hours. Today, my ambition is to use 16 slides to talk, only 30 minutes, nothing in comparison with the 110 used by Carlos Delgado, but it's an enrichment. Some steps are moving on. And of course, to all other speakers, moderators, and colleagues who shared this intense and really interesting final conference of the project. So, as always, is usual, move from the basic, and in this particular case, from some question that we have already addressed during these 3 years of a project. Why are microcredentials important in the European Union? In simple words, to boost quality and accessible lifelong learning, and to facilitate the way in which skills are shown and are understood. We already mentioned several times the definition offered by the Council recommendation in 2022, and how microcredentials are intended in the European Union if you look to such definition. Are they short and flexible training courses, or credentials that the learners acquired after completing those courses? And the answer that we can offer is clearly that we look at microcredential as a record. The flexible and target contents of short training course leads to a more accessible certification that can boost quality and accessible lifelong learning. But only microcredential as a record can facilitate the way in which skills are showed and understood in the labor market. So giving the growing diffusion that microcredential having and the progressive integration into formal and non-formal education, as already well explained, they cannot be fully understood outside a legal framework. And from a legal point of view, microcredential raise a set of issues directly concern the reliability as a certification instrument, the governance frameworks within which they are designed, issued, and recognized, and the protection of the rights of the individuals to whom they relate. So it's important also to remember, just remember, because we already mentioned during those days, that the definition is not enough to properly understand all the characteristics of microcredential. To this purpose, in the European Union, we want to consider other 2 building blocks to the whole European construction of microcredential. The 11 European standard elements to describe a microcredential that are present in the Annex 1 of a 2022 Council recommendation. These elements ensure that every microcredential issued in Europe is transparent, comparable, and portable across institution and borders. So this Annex 1 provides structural information that must be included into each microcredential. They have to be title, identify the holder, description of learning outcomes, the level, the type of assessment, the delivery mode. And at the same time, we also have to consider the 10 European principles for design and issuing of microcredential, the Annex 2 to the 2022 Council recommendation. And this principle highlights how microcredentials should be created and governed to ensure trust, fairness, and interportability. So Annex 2 provides a normative principle that guide how microcredential must be designed, assessed, issued, secure, and recognized. And evidently, we can make a comparison, and we can offer a comparative relationship between the start-on elements and the design principle. So the title is equal to transparency, the awarding button to the quality standard, the workload CTN to the recognition and portability as to the level at the national qualification framework. So this construction could be really useful to understand the concrete characteristic of every single microcredential. At the same time, we need to highlight that the European Union work on microcredential from nowadays 6 years at least, but concretely the process started before. The most important step has been made in 2020 with the European Skills Agenda, a broader European Union strategy on skill and education, within which has been elaborated the Council recommendation of 2022 that was named Council recommendation on a European approach to microcredential for life learning and employability that sets out a European policy framework aimed to supporting the quality, transparency, and uptake of microcredential across all the member states, and recommends that member states use microcredential where appropriate as a tool to complete existing learning opportunity and to increase the participation of all the individuals to lifelong learning. And even in the following 2023 European years of skills, the importance of lifelong learning and the European Union approach to microcredentials form a central part of the debate and reflection that lead us to the Union of Skill of 2025, a communication adopted in March 2025 that also largely refers to microcredential. It's important to highlight that Union of Skill is one of the 3 main strategies presented by the new European Union Commission that in its first 100 days. So this stress really clearly the importance that they attribute to microcredential. And where are microcredential in this process of the Union Skill? Specifically, the idea of Union Skill is to expand the use of microcredential as flexible learning solution in line with the European approach to ensure that they are trusted and understandable, but more to ensure that they are issued digitally and comparable across sector and countries. So the Union of Skills of 2025 will lead us to the idea and to the need to construct a legal framework for subjective professionalism, understood as the set of competencies, aptitude, and technical professional skills possessed and exercised in labor and social life. So we are talking about skills that characterize the individual along their existential experience, not only in their working life. And at European level, this has found expression through the introduction of various technical and operational instruments that are aiming to ensuring the mutual recognition of competence acquired by individuals. So if we can see all these instruments that we set through the years, we understand how for the European Union, this recognition, offering the opportunity to recognize, to having in a transparent way and recognizable way micro-credential is the results of a very long process. In this regard, we can mention the Europass framework, the Youth Pass, the European qualification frameworks, the European credit transfer and accumulation system, the European classification of skills, the European digital credential for learning. All these elements are able to construct an infrastructure that help people to have transparent, trustworthy, and recognizable micro-credential, recognizable professional competence acquired in different contexts. So nowadays we have micro-credential as crucial parts of subjective professionalism, and the possibility and transferability of competence are one of the main aspects that we have to consider. We understand that micro-credential become crucial since the subjective professionalism also require portability of the competencies. So micro-credential serve as means to a further, a more significant right of any single citizen in European Union, the right to the portability of the accumulated professional capital, which is closely linked to other two very fundamental rights that we have in European Union. On the one hand, to the principle of free movement and mobility of the person, including at the transnational level. So we have the right to move all around Europe and bring our capacity also in labor market. And on the other hand, to the principle of the usability of competence within the European credit system of vocational education and training. So we can clearly say that the larger aim of European Union regulation is to transform learning into a portable right through the attestation and certification of competence acquired at the end of a learning pathway, and on the basis of standards that are recognized both at the national and European level. At the same time, we can affirm that micro-credential may serve different purposes and respond to the interest of many actors: workers, enterprise, training providers, employment agency, and institution. And they are capable to address all these objectives that the most relevant include increasing the visibility of the competencies, fostering responsibility and awareness among individuals with regard to the training undertaking and their own professional pathway, and promoting the usability of competencies by recomposing fragmented professional identities. We have a lot of experience through our lifetime, and we are capable to fix all together in a complex but transparent way, facilitating the portability of all the competencies acquired, supporting mobility in the labor market, and ensure the free movement at the national and European level of workers, facilitating transition between learning systems at all levels. And one of the effects, but at the same goal, objective of this approach is improving the investment of public and private resources allocated to training and active labor market policy, and facilitating also the matching of the supply and demand for competencies, that is at the same time the supply and demand for labor. So in a European Union view, the topic of micro-credential is clearly strictly linked not only to the educational aspect, but also to the entrance of the labor market, to safeguard the right of the people to having the opportunity to obtain through a proper recognition of all the competencies acquired during the life and work pathway. So what we have to consider, that's clearly, if we look at the different member states in the European Union, we do not find a unique model, a unique approach to the regulation of micro-credential, because as Professor Delgado already explained, we have a public system and private system that are facing this exigence, and to be honest, and as well shown in some of the previous slides of Carlos' presentation, both systems walk in on parallel lines, since the reliability and transparency mechanism depends on several factors that are the same for both systems. So consistency with the existing regulatory framework, the form of representation usable in different contents of use, the contents that are tested, the requirement and referencing standards adopted, the quality of the process, and the credibility of the body that is responsible for delivering and attesting the learning outcomes. So in any case, if we look to a private or public system, we need to find a legitimation system which may be based on legal authority or based on the concept expressed by the social partners. We do not have a properly and unique answer, but we can say that clearly when the legitimation comes from the legal authority, comes from provision of law or a regulation framework at national or transnational level, it is easier to widespread the notion of microcredential and guarantee their portability and recognition. But in any case, we do not have a unique scenario. As already mentioned, we have three types of learning that face and talk with microcredential. Already explained the formal learning, the non-formal learning, and the informal learning. But the scenario that we can imagine are at least five. Formal learning leads us to the scenario one. Supply-driven microcredential as part of formal education for future learning. This is the most comprehensive and comprehensible, maybe, approach for the scheme that we are used to in the university. But at the same time, we have non-formal learning, where microcredential used to be more present, and informal learning. And non-formal learning lead to scenario 2, but can address also the exigence of scenario 3 and 4. Scenario 2, supply-driven microcredential for labor market entering and job setting. So professional credential, but at the same time, demand-driven microcredential. So we have a lot of enterprise and sectors that bring their microcredential because they need to address a specific exigence. So they ask to form people that are capable to do something specifically required inside the company, inside the industry. And the scenario 4, microcredential for vulnerable groups at risk. So all the exigencies of upskillings and reskillings, the people that are out of the labor market and that they ask to go inside the labor market maybe after to be fired. So they are vulnerable people that they need to evaluate the things that they acquire during the lifetime, all the informal learning. So all those needs to be addressed by a regulation, by a law that wants to govern and regulate microcredential. And we cannot guarantee that all the 4 scenarios are covered, but we need to consider that all 4 need to be addressed and all 4 are possible outcomes. If we look at the situation now in European Union, we also have to consider that the most comprehensive way to offer a legal framework for microcredential is try to put microcredential in national framework of qualification. So put the microcredential with degree, PhD, masters. And as we can see, the answer offered until now by the European Union countries are quite different. If we look at the picture, we have with the dark blue color, there are 18 countries that already included microcredential in their qualification framework. With the light blue color, there are 10 countries that are open to microcredential, but they haven't included them in their national framework qualification framework. And with the dark gray color, 9 countries that are not yet included micro-credential in it. But what is really interesting to highlight is that the answer that we can find in the 18 blue dark countries are different in comparison with them. So as already expressed by Carlos, they do not fix in the same way the requirements of micro-credential. Just to mention some significant experience in Croatia, they include formal qualification in their frameworks and the adult education, but also higher education can offer lifelong learning programs. So they are decided to even have the possibility to fund it, to voucher system all the offer of a micro-credential. In Netherlands, they include also non-formal micro-credential in their framework. And in order to do so, they are using the same approach for the qualification that usually gained through longer programs. So all the same steps needs to be made to arrive at a qualification of not formal micro-credential. Moving to the Italy experience. In Italy, micro-credential are integrated into the national training system through a ministerial decree, that is the number 115 of 2024. There is a plan for new competencies and has been made by the Ministry of Work, not the Ministry of the Education, to certify specific short-term learning outcomes aligned with European standards. And we can find here some specific characteristic. Really interesting is the fact that are authorized to certify micro-credential also bodies that are not university, like the chambers of commerce, and there are, at the same time, they are integrated with the national qualification framework, and they are portable, but the stackability is limited to 12 credits. So I can bring this type of experience when I start a regular degree or a master degree, but the recognition is limited to a very thin space, 12 ACTS, that means one single course. And at the same time, why we find this type of regulation in a ministerial decree rendered by the Ministry of Work? Because the purpose that we have to address in Italy is to address the significant 30% skills mismatch identified by the Italian companies when they looking for people at work. So they need to create as soon as possible the competencies that the industry and the work labor require nowadays. And they hope to reach the goal in this way. So moving from this very fragmented legal framework, we now need to consider what's new, is arriving. And what is arriving, or is already arrived, is the European Union regulation on the artificial intelligence. The Artificial Intelligence Act, there is a concrete milestone in European Union integration, but it's a very interesting approach because it is human-centric and right-based approach. We spent several time yesterday talking about artificial intelligence, and it is absolutely right, because we cannot imagine to still perform micro-credential and still talk about education without including all the relevant aspects that are faced by artificial intelligence. But it's very important to highlight that for the first time, the European Union has chosen to address artificial intelligence with this regulation, not merely as a technological innovation to be promoted or controlled, but as a social and legal phenomenon, requiring a regulatory framework grounded in the protection of fundamental rights. If we look at the recitals 127 of the AI Act, we can easily see how the attention is put on the exigence to protect fundamental rights and social interest. And it's also interesting because in the regulation, education is clearly set as a sensitive regulatory domain, which is the approach. The AI Act moved from a risk-based logic. It's not intended to regulate innovation as such. It seeks to govern the risks that may arise from the use of intelligent system in a sensitive context, like education is, where automatic decision-making have a substantial impact on the individuals. And the regulatory logic that grounded all the AI Act is clearly stated in the recital 27. In order to introduce a proportionate and effective set of binding rules for artificial intelligence system, a clearly defined risk-based approach should be followed. That approach should tailor the type and content of such rules to the intensity and scope of the risk that AI system can generate. So, as we can look at in the pyramid, is this therefore necessary to prohibit certain unacceptable risk, and AI system and obligation. So some AI practice are not allowed since they lead to an unacceptable risk that cannot be governed. In other cases, we have the exigence to lay down requirements for handle high risk and AI systems and obligation for the relevant operator in the system. And in other cases, we simply lay down transparency obligation for the rest of the AI system. So, in other words, not all AI applications are considered equally problematic, and what matters is the context in which such systems are used and the effect they may produce on individual rights, safety, and opportunity. So, if we look at the legal implication, the legal framework of AI is still focused on set the legal guarantees that must support such process when we use artificial intelligence process in the assessment, validation of or certification of competencies. At the same time, the allocation of responsibilities among the actors involved, and last but not least, the protection of rights. If we look at AI Act provisions concerning human oversight and responsibility of relevant actors, we need to focus the importance to read such provision in conjunction with the general data protection regulation, in particular the Article 5, 22, and 24, that governs the principle relating to the processing of personal data, Article 5, the automated individual decision-making, Article 22, and responsibility of the controller, Article 24. And they set out a legal framework governing the guarantees, accountability mechanism, and safeguards applicable to digital and data-driven process, including those that supporting the issuance and the use of micro-credential. And at the same time, also the protection of rights. It's very important notice that in the European Union, we have a Charter of Fundamental Rights of European Union that offers the constitutional framework within micro-credential must be designed, implemented, and recognized, even if we use artificial intelligence. So we need to ensure the protection of personal data, Article 8, the protection of right of education, Article 14, the rights of non-discrimination, Article 21, and the right to an effective remedy and fair trial or any of these use, Article 47. So these provisions constitute equal treatment, transparency, and effective legal safeguard for learners. At the same time, it's important to highlight that AI education involves a lot of ethical issues, but I still have only 2 minutes, so I cannot go in deeper with this, but already merge also in the talk that we received yesterday, the importance to handle all these ethical aspects, and in a very concrete way, how the AI Act handle the risk that we need to face when we use artificial intelligence in education. The Council recommendation offers some elements since concretely ask for the safeguards of educational contents, but the AI Act puts education in the high risk. So if we go back to this scheme, education is formally put in high risk activity that move from the high use of artificial intelligence. So, and we can clearly find this in the Annex 3, high-risk AI system referred to Article 6 that expressly say education and vocational training, high system intend to be used to determine access or admission or to assign natural person to educational and vocational training institution at all levels. If we use a system to do this or to evaluate learning outcomes or for the purpose of assessing the appropriate level of education or even for monitoring and detecting private behavior of the students during the test or within educational training activities, all those aspects creates a high risk in the use of artificial intelligence. And so we need to fix the obligation and the pre-requirements that all the providers needs to follow. As a consequence, AI system that affects students' assessment, access to educational pathway, or the recognition of the competence may have tangible and lasting effects on individual lives. And for this reason, the European legislator consider necessary to impose high standard requirement in terms of transparency, human oversight, data quality, and accountability of the actors involved. So at the very end, a further particular relevant aspect of the AI Act concerns the promotion of a genuine culture of artificial intelligence. The regulation offered by European Union does not merely establish obligation for providers of AI system, it also requires that those who deploy and use such system possess an adequate level of competence and understanding, not only in technical terms, but also with reference to the implication, limitation, and risk of automated system. The right of person affected by them are to take into a very strict consideration. And AI literacy can be considered as a necessary condition for the effective implementation and the enforcement of the regulation. In the educational context, this assumes particularly important as it concerns both educators and learners who are increasingly required to interact with complex technological systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for a very insightful and inspiring speech. Indeed, regulations, including the use of AI in education, are essential for enabling microcredentials to function as trustworthy instruments for lifelong learning and labor market mobility. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is time for a coffee break, networking, and poster exhibition. Please proceed to the room located at the left side of this hall and kindly join us again for the next parallel session at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.